In today's episode, I am talking about the only real things we can do to make this world a better place. My suggestions may feel confronting, will possibly challenge your beliefs, and will most likely leave you feeling a little triggered. It is not my intent to upset you. It is only ever my intent to share my experience and how it has changed me. Hello and happy Easter if you celebrate that. Either way, I hope you have all had some wonderful time off with your families and your friends. This is the Live Mindfully podcast, and I am your host, Laurie Moore. So as I record this, I am finishing off some of my Easter eggs and enjoying a dandelion tea. So if you have the opportunity, grab yourself a cuppa and let's get into this. So I have had a really big couple of weeks. I have been away camping in beautiful Yamba with some of my bestest and closest. And then I went and spent a few days out with my sister and my parents in Gympie. So there's been a lot of connection with others and it's been wonderful, but now I really need some stillness and quiet and just some connection with myself. Over the years, I have noticed that I am becoming really more and more sensitive, especially to things like sound and light. And even though I really enjoy being around people are loud. I'm loud. And people create a lot of noise. And I grew up in a family of 5 and there were always people in my house. So I guess as a child, I learned how to become extroverted as a way to live in that kind of an environment. And I can certainly step into that space when required. I certainly notice that when I am around a lot of people, I become really much, much louder than even I myself am comfortable with. And I also notice that I need a lot of quiet time after being in those kinds of environments. And it's such a paradox because I love being around people, but I always feel so depleted. And I notice that I need lots of alone time with only myself, and I need to be in quiet places where I can be still and read books and be, almost completely alone. And I found that really fascinating about myself. So I looked it up and I started reading more and more about people who displayed those kind of tendencies. And I came across 2 words: introverted and sensitive. And the more I've read about both these things, the more I realize that I am absolutely the most extroverted introvert and I am a really sensitive person. And I think because I have operated as an extrovert for so long, I have noticed 2 things about myself. The first is that if I don't create dedicated pockets of time for me to be still, I start to go crazy. And I notice that I'm not as patient and I'm certainly not as kind in my word and in my deed. And everything and everyone starts to really piss me off, to be honest. And I start being really snappy and aggressive. And I notice that I find it really difficult to regulate my nervous system. And the second thing that I notice, though, is that I also start to view the world in a more rushed, a more worried and more urgent and fearful way. My jealousy starts to spike. I find myself scrolling on Instagram, and instead of being inspired, I start looking at big accounts and what they are doing and the similar things, and I start judging myself and questioning why I'm doing those same things, but I don't seem to be having as much success. And then I start becoming obsessed with working more, and I get frustrated with my kids because I feel like they're annoying me while I'm trying to work. And then I get angry. It spirals really quickly because then I get angry with my husband because he's not supporting my dreams, which, FYI, My goodness, that is just so untrue. I have one of the best husbands in the whole world. He is always standing, he's standing like right next to my parents, screaming me to the finish line. He's one of the first people to listen to this podcast and come home and say, "Oh, great episode, babe. I really loved it. I loved it when you said this, and it made so much sense when you said that." He's so proud of me. But when I'm in this state, my perception of my whole world shifts. When I don't get that time to myself, I start projecting this internal perception of negativity out into the world. And in the initial commencement of that, I don't even realize that I'm doing it, that blows my mind. And then I start receiving back all the confirmation I need to know that the world is unjust and that the world is unfair. And Brené Brown says this. She says, don't go out into the world looking for examples of negativity or examples that you don't belong, because it's really easy to find them. And when I'm in that state, to me, people seem ruder because I am looking for it and most likely projecting it back. I notice I get every red light. I feel like I'm late to everything. I don't feel like things are working in my favor. Inevitably, the kids will get sick or I will get sick. And I start noticing even my behavior starts to change. The things that I do start to change. I start watching the news. And then I get to receive even more confirmation that bad things are happening all around me that I can't control. And then maybe I'm not paying as much attention when I'm driving. And so maybe I get a fine for speeding, or someone delivers some really annoying and bad news to me. And then I remember, I can't remember the last time I sat in stillness. I haven't moved my body in a way that feels good and nourishing for a really long time. And a massive one for me, I can't remember the last time I sat in the sun or connected my feet to the grass or touched a tree. I can't remember when I last drank water. I can see, when I'm stressed, I do this a lot. I'm not hungry. And I've skipped breakfast and replaced it with caffeine. And then I also end up skipping lunch, and it sort of comes to the end of the day and I realize, I've only eaten 4 biscuits. And then I realize my energy is really low. And then that's normally when I start to notice my emotions becoming much more heightened in the sense of sadness. I start to feel myself like wanting to cry because I know I've done it again. I haven't remembered to create time for me. I haven't remembered to create time to be quiet, Laurie. And I've gotten caught up in the motions of the world, in the motions of life, and I've lost myself amongst the sea of busyness again. And instead of creating a world for myself and my husband and my children that feels safe, I've been too busy busting my hump to keep up with the chaos, and then projecting that negativity back out into the world. I've been too focused on others. I've been too invested in their successes, their failures, what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right, and how I compare. I'm judging everything and everyone. I'm no longer running a race against myself. I've placed myself up against the whole world. And guess what? I'm not worthy. That's the message I have received. And so I am fighting and fighting and fighting. And I've lost my grounding. I've lost my trust in myself. I've lost the capability of hearing my intuition. And I'm swept up in the loud voices and opinions being broadcasted in every corner that I turn, because I haven't stopped to listen to that tiny voice inside. And let me tell you something about this small voice inside. It won't fight against the noise of the world. It has no interest in competing with that loud external noise. That small voice inside, it won't get louder. So if you want to hear what that quiet voice has to say, you have to get purposefully still. You have to cultivate time to actually listen to that voice if you want to hear it. And that voice will remind you that you have a good heart and that you are surrounded by good people. That voice will encourage your creativity and steer you toward the right things for you, toward the light, toward the things that make you feel grounded and loved and happy. That voice doesn't care what other people on Facebook and Instagram are doing. That voice is happy for the happiness of others and can very clearly see through any BS that might exist. That voice doesn't encourage you to engage in behaviors that are harmful to your body, mind, and soul. That voice doesn't encourage you to get caught up in other people's drama, or worse, create your own. That voice encourages compassion for everyone in this world, no matter what their choices are. It doesn't care if someone is doing something completely differently, because it knows this is what is right for you. It isn't interested in justifying its experiences or entertaining others' opinions about how you should live your life. It helps you set boundaries and respect others' boundaries. It organically feels love and happiness and joy. It wants to express and share and unite positively and constructively. It allows you to easily source out gratitude. So the only thing that we can do to make this world a better place is to listen to that intuitive guiding voice within. We cannot make this world a better place by only listening to the noise that exists in the outside world. The late Sir Ken Robinson says in his famous TED Talk, "Do schools kill creativity?" That creative people, they're going to be the ones to solve the problems in this world. And you know where creative people live? They live in their own imaginations. Some of them almost exclusively, and I can say that with a huge amount of confidence because I'm raising one. And she is absolutely the most fabulous person on the planet. And anyone who knows my little Maddie is lit up just by being in her presence. But she lives her life 100% in the space of imagination. And since the 1960s, there has been this theory that the right side and left side of the brain are in charge of different functions and that we each have a dominant side. And this dictates how we think. And there's been a study now from 2013, and I'll add the link in the show notes, but this study has shown that this is actually not accurate. That we are all capable of utilizing all areas of the brain dependent on which tasks we are completing. So, of course, someone more focused on completing a maths task is going to light up the areas of the left-hand side of the brain. But this does not mean that this part of the brain is more dominant for this person. It is only dominant in this current moment because of the task the person is completing. And one of the best ways to light up this creativity within is to come into stillness or to do activities that elicit mindfulness, painting, dancing, moving the body in a way that feels nourishing for you, meditating, kayaking, swimming, running, walking your dog, standing in nature, standing in the sun, yoga, drawing, journaling, creative writing, daydreaming. Oh, daydreaming is such a good one. And for this to be a truly productive moment for you, it's best if you create space each week to do some of these activities alone, with no external noise, no external influence. When we create these pockets of doing things alone, our internal guiding voice is clear and we can hear it. Sitting in complete stillness isn't for everyone, and I get that. But there are so many ways we can create quiet and calm without having to come into stillness. Albert Einstein did not sit down and brainstorm. He created time in his day to let his mind wander. And he called this method combinatory play and claims it is the secret behind his genius. Now, combinatory play sounds a lot like daydreaming to me. It's the function of sitting and just letting your mind do whatever it wants to do, which also sounds a lot like my version of meditation. And it also sounds a lot like creating space and stillness for your internal voice to speak. And I think we can all agree that Albert Einstein made the world a better place. And he did this all because he created dedicated time each week to stare into his fireplace. And the link to this article is also in the show notes. And what's funny, and this thought just popped into my head, Steve Irwin used to do this as well. In Terry Irwin's book, My Steve, she says that whenever Steve was faced with a problem, he would go to the back of their property in Beerwah and light a massive fire and just stare into it. And in his experience, the answer always came to him. So if you have seen yourself in some of the comments I have made about judging yourself, or if you see a lot of negativity in this world, or you're feeling out of control or helpless, if you're feeling a lot of anger rising within, if you're noticing anxiety, or you're feeling stressed, or maybe you're just not caring for yourself as well as you think you should be, if you know you're not projecting the best version of yourself into this world, or you seem to be focused on helping everyone around you, then my guess is that you are probably not finding very much time to do things alone, and things that spark creativity and encourage quietness, so you can hear your internal guiding system, your internal voice within. You are maybe spending too much time doing and existing in the fast pace of this world and trying to keep up and find yourself. And it has been my experience, unfortunately, that no matter how hard you try, you are probably not adding the value you want to be if you're searching outside for the answers. You are probably creating a lot of stress for yourself and for those around you. My guess is that you become frustrated very easily. Maybe you feel a lot of unhappy and upsetting feelings within, and maybe instead of sitting with those feelings, you push them down or numb. And maybe you're sitting there right now and thinking, well, how do you know? Well, I've been there. I've done those things too. And maybe you've gotten to the end of this podcast and decided that everything I have said is too much and you want to reject it, and that is perfectly okay. But maybe you have reached a point like I did where you are willing to try something different because you want to contribute positively to your world and to the world at large. And if everything is working for you, keep doing that. But if it isn't, maybe combinatory play or daydreaming or finding an activity that fills your cup, but that you can also do alone so you can hear that internal voice, is worth trying. The important thing to remember is that you do have a good heart and you are surrounded by good people. And that internal voice, it'll tell you so much more about yourself and about the goodness that exists in this world. And it'll encourage you to live more positively than anything else that you can find in a book, in a podcast, in the outside world. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I am sending you so much love. Until next week, take good care of yourself.